Okay, hello, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will be talking about season 14 of Doctor Who and why I thought it was very bad. Disclaimer, there will be spoilers for the whole thing and I'm not going to really recap anything, so yeah. Also, this is not going to be a video about how Doctor Who is like too woke now, so if that's what you're looking for, leave. I'm going to go through all the episodes in chronological order, kind of outlining some of the main issues I had with them, and then I will talk about the finale and like general issues that the show has as a whole, or like the season has as a whole. I am also calling it season 14 because I am not gonna call it season 1 because like it's not though. That's just like a branding thing that Disney did, in my opinion, for like so they could show it from season 1 on Disney Plus. I'm gonna start with Church on Ruby Road. I don't have much to say about this one. I didn't really think it was a very good first episode for Gatwa. I consider this his first episode because it's like the first full episode that he has. And also because the giggle is mostly like David Tennant. Even once they bi-generate, it's like focused on David Tennant the whole time. So this is like the first run that 15 really has. The plot is kind of goofy, which is fine. I didn't really like the Goblin song that they had. There are a couple of setups. There's like the mystery of who Ruby is and of like Mrs. Flood like breaking the fourth wall and stuff. The setups are fine. They're interesting enough. Yeah, I thought it was like a fun episode, but it wasn't really that good, so I was hoping the rest of the season would be better, and I was very disappointed. Moving on to the actual premiere, Space Babies, it was like the rat-lowering gunshot of Doctor Who. Like, genuinely, I watched it and I was like, oh, they're like telling us this is not going to be a good season. But I did not take that as a hint for some reason. This story is like pretty bland, even though I think the premise is quite interesting. Like there could have been more done with the idea of like babies that like don't age and end up having to become the crew of the spaceship because they've been abandoned. The bogeyman reveal was kind of obvious. They said that it's like a bogeyman, and then that like thing of like the bogies being like collected or whatever. I don't know. It was just kind of like, okay, the reasoning behind why the bogeyman should be saved and not killed was kind of not really there. It just came out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden the doctor's like, oh, like he's good actually. The exposition delivered to Ruby, it genuinely just felt like an exposition dump, which is not really a good sign. Generally speaking, I think RTD has been pretty good at dealing with having exposition in his Doctor Who writing, so this is far worse than I'm used to from him. It also just sucks in general because it's so unnatural. Like he kind of just has the doctor say a bunch of things to Ruby and she doesn't really react and goes like, oh sick, can we like see some planets now? So that's not great. I have my notes here, that's what I'm looking at. There was a lot of tonal whiplash between how we were supposed to react to the babies, I think, and how the episode itself was treating them. There were, you know, like there was that one scene where they got really scared of the bogeyman and then the doctor kept scaring them, and at first it felt like it was supposed to be funny, and then it felt like, oh, we're supposed to feel sad for the babies, and it was like it was supposed to be funny again. Within the same like span of like a minute or two, and that's kind of what the whole episode was like. I understand what people like about it, but I just don't like it at all. I think it's a terrible episode. Okay, moving on to Devil's Chord. The most disappointing thing about this episode was it was supposed to be the Beatles episode where they like go to see the Beatles record one of the albums. I forgot which one. I'm not really that big into the Beatles, but there were no Beatles in the episode. They had like one of the Beatles, they had like a Beatle in the episode, or maybe they had like two Beatles in the episode, but I have no idea which one it was supposed to be. Like, I did not even catch a name. Maybe it was said once. There was nothing distinguishing the Beatles. Like, I had no idea how to tell which Beatle is supposed to be which. The Beatles had like no like personality. The way that they were so excited to like see the Beatles, and then they had that like terrible song about like my dog is named Fred, or like whatever the song was. That was how I felt watching the episode. Like, I was so excited to see like the Beatles episode with like some kind of music situation going on, but like that's not what we got. Maestro being the like bad guy so soon after the toy maker feels extremely repetitive, especially because they have like the same shtick. Maestro also wasn't really that scary, honestly. I don't really know what to say apart from the fact that Maestro just wasn't that interesting of a villain. I thought they would be more interesting after that opening, but they didn't really end up doing much. And the whole world being destroyed because of the music not being there or whatever, I couldn't take it seriously because I knew they would immediately reverse it. And because that's what happens in Doctor Who. There was a 6-month time skip in this episode. I think that was a terrible idea. I don't know why they wrote that in there. It doesn't make sense within the episode itself, because they have the 6-month time skip, and then the Doctor is seemingly for the first time asking Ruby if there's anything she really wants to see, and it just feels like that's something they would maybe have done before the 6-month mark, like maybe at the couple of days mark, or like the 1 week mark, or like immediately after their first trip. I don't know. So yeah, it's like another one of those things where it feels like they could have done something interesting with the premise. They don't really do much. Again, I can see what people like about this episode especially, a lot more than Space Babies, because Maestro was a good performance. I did not find it scary or menacing, but it was like fun. So I understand that. I just think it was underwhelming. Moving on to Boom. This is like gonna be crazy coming from like a Moffat hater. This was the best episode of the season. It was actually well written. The whole idea of the Doctor not being able to move for like basically the whole episode, great, like fantastic, and also a great way to have Gatwa like flex his acting abilities, which he absolutely did. I think the commentary on like the war profiteering and like just blindly believing stuff was like a bit too on the nose, but it's okay because the writing in the episode was so good that the fact that it was really obvious the whole time what kind of story was being told was something I didn't really mind. Ruby doesn't get much to do, but that's okay. This is also the first episode in the season that gives any real attention to any of the side characters. They're kind of the heart of the story, like with the dad who's dead, and the like Lady Mundy. Yeah, they're actually like an important part of the story, and they get to have their viewpoints sort of developed. Like Mundy has, you know, like a belief system that she's defending and is eventually proven wrong, but that's like actually something we get to see, which we don't for the rest of the season. So like, get your entire dose, you know what I'm saying, just get all of that interesting side characters done right now, because it's never gonna happen again for the rest of the season. Yeah, it was good. There's like a timeline issue with the fact that in the last episode we had a 6-month time skip, and this is apparently the first time Ruby is like going to a planet, but it's okay. I mean, that's such a small issue in a largely quite solid episode that I don't mind it. And this is also the only time that the Doctor has any character exploration. Ruby doesn't have any, but that's not this episode's fault, so that's okay. This was a good episode. End of this episode's discussion and onto 73 Yards, which is terrible. This one was also written by Russell T Davies, and honestly, what I'm getting from this season is that Russell T Davies like does not know how to write science fiction anymore. 73 Yards was a mess. It was poorly written. There was a lot of interesting things that 73 Yards was trying to set up, and with the marketing and with the premise of this episode, we were promised a Welsh folk horror story, which could be very interesting. I think Doctor Who does horror extremely well. Some of my favorite Doctor Who episodes are horror. Like, I love Midnight, and that's a Russell T Davies horror episode in Doctor Who, in which like one of the main characters is not there, and that's a great episode. That does not happen here. As soon as Ruby gets to the pub in that little town, all of the tension that's been built up quite well so far just starts to sort of vanish. They have that little joke about everyone going on about Mad Jack or something, and then they reveal that it was all a bit, and like, Welsh people aren't really all witches, guys. And like, I mean, I get it, but this is also Welsh folk horror story, so like, you know, we're not like stereotyping the Welsh, but maybe in the horror story you can accept the fact that there is going to be some weird shit going on in this place that happens to be Wales. Maybe you can do that. And then there's this joke that I don't know what it was going for when Ruby asks if she can use her phone to pay, and they all kind of pretend they've like never heard of that, and you're supposed to think like, oh my god, is she in the past? And they're like, yeah, of course, like we're not like backwards villagers or something. And I guess it's like a stereotype about Welsh people. It just like does not land at all, because in the year 2024 there are plenty of places where you cannot pay with your phone. Like it's just not really, it doesn't work, because it's like, this exists in real life. Like, I've been in big metropolitan cities where you can walk into like a cafe and they'll be like, we do not accept Apple Pay, like give me cash, or just like credit card, like regular, like we just don't accept paying with your phone. We just don't have that. Like they have that in real life. I mean, I went to like a restaurant a couple of weeks ago where they had that. Like it's a genuine question. It's just not, it just doesn't work. And then the really annoying thing is they completely abandoned the horror story thing a couple of minutes in. There are like interesting elements being set up, like this woman is always 73 yards away from Ruby, and whenever someone hears her talking, they like basically just like leave and like run away from Ruby. And you know, that could be so interesting, but it's not really explored. It's not really left to fester like in a good horror story. They just sort of abandon it, and then it becomes about taking down this corrupt politician, Roger Ap Gwilliam, who's like insane or something. She just does. Like, she's just waiting for a while, and then one day she's like, I'm gonna do it now, and then she does it, and then that's it, and then it just skips to like when she's really old and about to die, and then it turns out that she was the woman, and she's like, and it's like this weird like time loop thing. None of it is explained, so this ends up being an episode where none of it matters, because Ruby gets out of the time loop thing that started all of this in the first place by not stepping on the, I don't remember what it was, on the thing. She doesn't step on the thing. She doesn't start this series of events. The problem with this is that it has no effect on Ruby's character. It has no effect on the Doctor's character. We don't learn anything about the world and how it works, because we don't get any answers in this episode. Like, nothing is resolved. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect the characters, and it doesn't affect the story. So why? Like, why did we do all of that? Why did we have this episode, and why did nothing get explained? And you know, it's just unsatisfying. Like, nothing is explained, and it also doesn't matter because the characters don't even remember it. And yeah, like, it's all set up and no payoff. And I've seen Moffat get like a lot of flack for this, and rightfully so, because a lot of his Doctor Who was all set up and no payoff, or like all set up and then the payoff was just more set up for more things. But when RTD does it, people like really liked it for some reason. I feel like I'm going crazy watching people talk about how good this episode was, or like how much they liked it, because a lot of people like this episode, but it was just such a mess, and it wasn't satisfying to watch, and it wasn't interesting. It was just boring. It was like a bunch of things happen for no reason, and then it's never explained, and it doesn't matter to Ruby anyway because she doesn't remember any of it. Like, the most lasting consequence this has for Ruby is she remembers the name Roger Ap Gwilliam, and that she thinks she's been to Wales one more time than she actually has. That's nothing. That's nothing. Okay. This was a bad episode. Moving on to Dot and Bubble, which is also a bad episode. This one is like the most frustrating one for me to talk about, because everyone, or maybe not everyone, but a lot of people really liked this episode and said it was like really deep and had all these themes about racism and how it's bad. But that's it. The message of this episode was that racism is bad, and it comes after like a full like 40 minutes of episode where there's like barely anything about racism in the story. Like, all it has to say about racism for like 40 minutes is that sometimes people are racist, and then all it has to say at the end of those 40 minutes for the rest of like the 5 minutes left of the episode is that it's bad when people are racist. It's just not a story about racism. It's not like tackling these themes. It doesn't have anything to say, and it's racism tacked onto an episode that is fundamentally about kids being on their phones and how this is making them stupid. It's the phone rots your brain episode. Lindy cannot walk without her phone. Like, that's the level of writing we're dealing with. And then for some reason, this is like suddenly about racism when we're devoting entire scenes to how Lindy is so stupid. She like doesn't understand alphabetical order, and she can't walk, and she like can't do anything without her stupid phone. And you know, it's just not a racism episode. It's just not. Like, it's an episode about how the phone is going to make you stupid, and then also all of the stupid people on their phones happen to be racist, which is, by the way, that's not how racism works in real life. Like, Russell T Davies was patting himself on the back about how he's portraying racists as stupid people, but racists in real life are not stupid people. Like, they know what they're doing. They're doing it on purpose. They're racist on purpose. They're not racist because they're stupid. They're just racist. Like, it's not correlated. Like, smart people can be racist too, and stupid people can be not racist. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with it. And then so many people were like, oh wow, the Dots were killing them for a good reason, but there's no reason to believe in the story that the Dots are killing them because they're racist. The Dots just hate them because they're always on their damn phones. Like, you know, these people are so stupid that they were walking right into the monsters' mouths like all of the time. You know, like, I kind of feel like if it was actually because they're racist that the Dots were killing all of them, that maybe that should have been communicated in the fucking story of the episode instead of, I don't know, like a fan theory. You know, like, you know how writing works, where you communicate the message you want in the episode that you're writing instead of waiting for fans to just think it up later. Also, I just wanted to point out that this episode was written by Russell T Davies, who is a white man and so has likely not experienced racism based on his skin color. And the entire writer's room for this season was full of only white people. And I think that is a detriment to this episode. I think it would have been a lot more meaningful if it had been written by a writer of color, preferably a black writer, because Trudy Gatwa is black, and maybe they would have had more interesting things to say about race than just don't be racist. Tackling of the issues was quite shallow, and I don't really have any proof or evidence for this theory of mine, but I do think that most of the people who kind of resonated with this episode and its extremely shallow a take on racism have probably never read anything written about racism by someone who is not a white man from Wales. So maybe you should try doing that and, like read some Toni Morrison or something. Also, the really annoying thing about this, how little the doctor actually gets to say about all the racism, because like in the beginning it's like small things, like she blocks him because she's racist and she calls him stupid because she's racist, and then at the end they like don't want him to save them because they're racist. But instead of it being, I don't know, instead of it being something that actually gets addressed in the story, he doesn't even get to say, like, you guys are so racist. Stop being racist for like 2 seconds and just let me save you. He doesn't even get to say that. He just kind of like laughs like really exasperatedly, and it's, it's a great performance from Gatwa because he's a really good actor, but the writing is just not there. Like he doesn't even get to have like an opinion about racism in the racism episode. It's frankly quite confounding why he's so obsessed with saving the really racist rich kids. Like why do you care so much? I mean, it's kind of like Russell is forgetting the character that he has written for before, because like the doctor has been willing to condemn people for far less egregious things than are happening in this episode. Sometimes a guy is just kind of an asshole and the doctor's like, I wish he was dead. Where's the one with like the space Titanic and there's this like business guy who dies? Or no, there's like this business guy who lives and Astrid dies, like that episode. Like he wishes that Astrid had lived instead of the business guy, and his only like crime is like being an asshole. And he's not like racist, he's not like hurting anyone, he's just like, wow, I'm rich now, I'm business guy. And the doctor's like, wow, I wish you were dead actually. And he's so obsessed with saving the racists in this episode for some reason. Like why do you care so much? Why do you care about this, dude? You have so many better things to do. Like, why does he care so much about this? And I just don't get it. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like if I were dealing with these people who were just extremely racist towards me, I'd be like, dude, whatever, man. Like, you go into the forest and you die from your incompetence. Like, it's fine. I don't care. But he just cares so much. And I don't understand, like, why he's so invested in saving them. And, like, why is he so upset that they won't let him save them? Like, just, dude, who cares? Let them die. Oh my god. During this part, which I kind of like forgot to say, was they're not really shown to have any redeeming qualities, maybe apart from Ricky because he reads and he's like smart because he reads, and he's like not really as racist as the other ones because he reads. Like, Lindy doesn't have any redeeming qualities, neither do any of her friends. They're like, they barely even care about people dying. They're just kind of, they're assholes and they're stupid and they're racist, and we're never really shown anything that we can empathize with. They're not really people. They're just one-dimensional characters that are made for you to hate. Like, they're literally tailor-made in a lab for you to hate them. So it's, yeah, I wanted to add that that's what I was trying to say with me not understanding why he really wants to save them so much, because they're not really shown to have any redeeming qualities. And yeah, like it's just completely confounding. I don't get it. Basically, this episode is terrible, and it doesn't work because it is not actually about racism. It is about stupid people being stupid on their phones. And it could have been about something else. It could have been about like echo chambers, but it wasn't about that. They weren't racist because of echo chambers. They were just racist. Like, they were just racist the whole time. And then Ricky September is like, for some reason, not racist because he like doesn't use his phone and he's like always reading, and like reading makes you not racist or not. It's such a mess. I'm like not gonna address all of the ways in which this is a mess. There are for sure people who have done this in a more eloquent way than I am doing it right now, just because this episode confounds me and also infuriates me, and I don't really want to think about it because it's so bad. So moving on to Rogue, this was the first episode in the season that I felt was a fun episode that was actually fun to watch. I mean, I liked Boom, but that was kind of like very depressing, which is fine. I mean, it was a good episode, but sometimes you want like a fun episode. But the thing with Rogue was, while I did enjoy it quite a bit, I think Rogue was extremely bland and had like no personality. He was basically just like a ripoff of Jack, basically because it seems like Russell T Davies, or maybe the writers of this episode, who are Heron and Bredman, seemed upset that they couldn't use Jack because of like what's going on with Barrowman. So they just decided to make like a more boring version of him to be in this episode. I think that explains that scene where he thinks that the doctor is a Cholder, and then there's like this projection thing showing his previous faces. That should not work on Rogue, because Cholders are shapeshifters. That's like their whole thing. Their shtick is that they're shapeshifters, and all that's proving is like that the doctor has had other faces before, which does not rule him out from being a Cholder. Like it could be both, you know, he could have these faces before and also be a Cholder. The only way it would work would be if it was actually Jack, and like for some reason he couldn't recognize the doctor until he saw like a couple of his previous incarnations. It was like, oh yeah, okay, I get it now, because one of the ones they show is just like the David Tennant one, and it's like, I mean, like, why would that convince Rogue? Like, why would it convince him? If that is somehow proving that he's not a Cholder, it's not explained in the episode. Like, that's just something they expect you to get magically. The relationship that the Doctor and Rogue have kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, they kind of just decide that these two characters should be flirting now, so they do flirt. There's no real development of their relationship. Rogue doesn't really get to have a character, and the Doctor is kind of just the same character throughout the whole seasons. He's kind of like what you would get if you threw all of the Doctors into a blender, and you would get out Gatwa's Doctor, who is definitely the Doctor, but he's just not got anything that makes him unique compared to the other Doctors. Like, there's not something that I can imagine, like with other Doctors, I can imagine like if this one walks into this situation, how would they react? Like, I don't know, like if like Paul McGann's Doctor walked into this situation, like what kind of thing would he say? I can imagine that, even if it's like, you know, not the best writing or something. Like, I have some conception of their personality, of their character. I can do that. But with Gatwa, because he's given so little to work with, the only things that you can do that with are like maybe his tone of voice, or like the kind of expression he would have on his face. And that's just because Gatwa is a really good actor who can elevate the material he's given. It's not because he's given good material to work with in which the character he's playing is characterized in an interesting way. This is an episode in which Ruby doesn't get to do anything again. Like, most of the time she's doing nothing. She doesn't get to do anything. Other companions, they, by this point in the season, where the next episode is going to be the season finale, or like the two-parter or whatever, by this point, other companions have actually had something to contribute to the story. Who should I compare with? Like Rose, she was making decisions and like saving the Doctor already, like way sooner in her season. Like, the first episode, she was making decisions and saving the Doctor. That's why he invites her to travel with him, because he's like, oh, she's like cool. You don't ever see this from Ruby in the whole season. Like, we have the season finale two-parter as the next 2 episodes, and Ruby never does anything of the sort. She just doesn't do anything. Like, she doesn't make decisions. She's the most bland stock companion you could possibly have in Doctor Who. She's, you know, a young girl from modern day England, and like, that's it. Like, we don't know if she has a job. She's 19. We don't know if she has a job. Everything we know about her is plot relevant, which becomes extremely frustrating when we get to the point where, like, the plot relevant stuff becomes, you know, front and center, because you kind of realize in the finale that Ruby has no character. We don't know, like, even basic facts about her, and she's so sort of like obedient to everything the Doctor tells her to do that it's kind of boring. You know, like, the Doctor is always talking about how his companions are always wandering off, and it's so annoying. Like, you know, he tells all of them to stay put, stay where they are. But the reason it's interesting to watch is because those companions are people, and they have an actual objective. Like, they have a goal that they're working towards that is maybe not going to be the same as what the Doctor is trying to do. Like, the Doctor is trying to figure out something else. Rose is like trying to unionize the Ood. The Doctor is like, where the fuck are we? And Rose is like, do they pay you? It's interesting to watch, you know, because they have, like, wants. They have things that they're trying to do. Ruby just doesn't have any of that. Ruby doesn't have a life outside of the show. And it becomes extremely frustrating in Legend of Ruby Sunday, which I'm going to talk about now, which is, it's all exposition, and it's just setup. It's just a full episode of setup, and then in, like, the last couple of minutes we get a bit of payoff, but honestly we just get more setup. In this episode, the Doctor thinks, for some reason that I cannot understand, that Susan Triad is Susan, like his Susan, like Susan Foreman, his granddaughter. Like, just for some reason. He just thinks that for some reason, and frankly, I cannot understand why, because, like, why would you think that, first of all? Second of all, why would Susan be everywhere? Like, you are suspicious of Susan Triad because she's literally everywhere you go, and she's just like a normal person who's, like, integrated into the scenery. You know, she's like the ambulance lady, and she's like the racist girl's mother, and so on and so forth. Why would she do this? Like, why? How would she do this, and why would she do this? And if it's on accident, then why? Like, how did it happen? And why would she change her name to Triad to get the, you know, like, S Triad TARDIS anagram? Why would she do that? It's almost like she's not a real person, and she's a character in a TV show, and Russell is writing her knowing that he doesn't have to actually write a character. It's just kind of confusing. Like, why would she do that? And then the thing is, if she's trying to hide, why would she do that? And if she's looking for the Doctor, like, why would she do that? I didn't understand either way. Why would she do that? And I would actually have been more angry if it turned out to be Susan, because it's like, why would she do this? Like I don't understand why he saw a woman named Susan with, like, a TARDIS anagram, maybe, and just immediately decided, like, oh, this is maybe my granddaughter. Like, dude, why? Does he do this every time he meets a Susan? Like, does he just see a Susan and he's like, oh my god, that's what my granddaughter's called? I mean, I find it so laughable. Yeah, that did not hit at all for me. The fact that Sutekh is the bad guy, I will address that later. That's revealed. It's fine. It's an okay reveal. Empire of Death, like, Legend of Ruby Sunday was all exposition and no setup. Empire of Death is like 90% filler, and then sometimes things happen in Empire of Death. Sutekh is only keeping them alive. At this point, by them I mean Ruby, the Doctor, and Mel. He's only keeping them alive because he's like, trying to figure out who Ruby's mom is, and like he doesn't know. So it's like this big mystery, like who's Ruby's mom, and this is like the final like iteration of that, because this is the season finale and we have to resolve it before the season ends. So Sutekh can't figure out who her mom is, so he literally just waits for them to figure it out, so like he can also know, and then I guess he'll kill them after he's satisfied, and it'll be really boring because everyone's dead. In most of this episode, nothing happens, and then in the last 5 minutes they just resolve everything. They just like kill him. Then Ruby goes and finds her like actual mom, and there's the Ruby exit, which is played very emotionally, but I didn't really feel emotional at all, and I will address that in a little bit. The first thing I'm going to talk about with like the finale in general issues are that Sutekh is just not a very interesting bad guy to have as the payoff to like everything that's being set up. RTD kind of has this issue in general with payoffs where whatever he sets up does not at all actually set up what the payoff is going to be. Having like a random woman show up over and over again in the show, that does not actually set up Sutekh. But I don't know, for some reason people had already guessed it. I mean, I was so underwhelmed when I saw the reveal, because I was like, oh, like that like one person on Reddit was right. Like it literally is the guy from like one serial in the 70s. And what bothers me about that is like he's literally he's one guy from who was in like one thing. He was in one story in the 70s one time, and like sure, it was a good story, like great, you know, he functioned perfectly well for what he was in, but he is not the like league of bad guy that you need for a finale. He did not freak me out at all, and I don't know, I feel like if I was going into this season not knowing anything about Doctor Who, which is this is being marketed as like the beginning of a new era, and like you don't need to know anything to watch it now, like I think I would have been even more underwhelmed. Like, okay, like he's like a dog, like okay, like fine, yeah, okay, and for some reason he's doing like all this shit with like the anagrams. Why is he doing that? That's not the kind of bad guy he is. Like that's not his MO. Like why is he doing that? And the reason he's doing that is because he's not being written as Sutekh. He's being written as like, oh, we need like an intriguing mystery for this show, so like let's just make some shit up. If he's supposed to be the one who waits and that's like not resolved yet, he is so underwhelming, and I kind of hope that is not actually what's happening, and the one who waits will just be some new character that we have not seen before. Like please, oh my god, I think he should just invent a new character who's like scarier than all the other characters instead of trying to pull something out of his ass like he did with Sutekh. And the stupidest thing about Sutekh is the way they kill him in Empire of Death, because they literally just put a leash on him and then they drag him around through the time vortex. And like, why does that kill him? Because according to this like episode, or the last episode maybe, according to this season of the show, Sutekh got this powerful in the first place by being in the time vortex and like sucking up all the power or something. Like this is how he got powerful. Why is it killing him now? And this is never explained. It just does. That also reverses everything, because like for some reason it does. The plot wise thing of like, this is how we defeated the bad guy, it doesn't make any sense. And that's true for like a lot of things that Russell T Davies has done, but it's particularly egregious here because usually he backs up his bullshit Deus Ex Machinas with like really good character writing, you know, like Parting of the Ways. The fact that Rose like looks into the TARDIS and like becomes like God Rose slash whatever, that's so stupid, but it works because of the character writing. The thing is, Russell T Davies in this season, he has completely forgotten how to do character writing, or he's simply not interested in it. That's the thing he's good at. That's the one thing he's good at, is doing character writing, and he's completely given it up in this in this season just to focus on the plot, but he's not a plot guy. He's so many Russell T Davies plots are just like so stupid, but they work because of the character writing. In season 3, Ted like flies and like glows like freaking Jesus, and like it works anyway, even though it looks like so stupid because of the character writing. But like he just forgot that, so it's just stupid now. Like there's nothing holding it up. I'm gonna talk about the Ruby reveal about her mom and why it was so bad. Now, the first thing is like the snow. Like Ruby can make it snow wherever she goes, and for some reason this stops in 73 yards, but that's not really addressed either. There's like the song that's like Inner Soul or whatever that's revealed in the Devil's Chord. No one knows who Ruby's mom is, including Sutekh. Like this is the kind of stuff we're finding out. Like she goes on to Vina McCall and she can't find her mom. Like she's literally been looking like forever and she can't find her mom. And like Sutekh, who is supposed to be this like insanely powerful god, like the most powerful in the universe, or at least like really up there in power level, he literally kills everyone like all at once. And it's just like he can't find her mom either, you know. So you're being told constantly throughout the show that this is like a really big deal, that this is like a really big mystery, and these are the clues that you're given to solve it. So it's like Ruby can make it snow. How does she do that? Ruby has a song that's like ingrained in her soul or something, which like no one else has in the Devil's Chord. That doesn't happen with any other characters, and it actually scares Maestro as well. So like, how is she doing that? Like, what does this mean? These are all the clues that you have. And then the issue is the way this is resolved is by Russell T Davies laughing in your face, calling you an idiot, and being like, her mom was just some regular woman the whole time, except she wasn't, because of all the things that are happening in the story. Like, normal people just don't make it snow just because they think that their mom is really important. That's just not how it works. And if that is how it works in your world now, you need to set that up. You need to make it clear that these are the new rules in Doctor Who, and a reason that the rules of the universe have changed to a different set of rules where this kind of thing is possible, because it's just not something that happens. Like you're lying. That's not who she is. And it's all played as like, oh, it was this big mystery only because she turned it into a mystery, and also because only the viewers turned it into a mystery. But the viewers are not who turned it into a mystery. Like we who were watching it, we didn't make it a mystery. They set up a mystery on purpose, and then when we wanted a resolution, they basically said, it doesn't matter, this was your fault for thinking it's important, fuck you, her mom is just a regular person. So yeah, they're basically just laughing in your face for expecting a resolution to the thing that they set up. Also, the whole like her mom pointing because she's naming her thing, that sign wasn't even there in Church on Ruby Road. I went back to watch the scene. It's just not there. Like that's not, like, she didn't do that because it just wasn't there. It's like they didn't even think of the resolution until they wrote the other episodes, and then they didn't bother to go back and like edit anything in Church on Ruby Road, or maybe it was already filmed, so they were like, yeah, whatever, who cares. Like that's not what happened. Why would she do that? Why would she point at a sign that wasn't there to name her daughter? Who does that anyway? Like, if she really wanted her to be called Ruby, she could have just written like a note that said, name the baby Ruby, and left her there. Like, it's, you know, like, she didn't have to turn around and point. There was supposed to be no one there. And, you know, like, I guess the doctor's there, but, like, the sign wasn't. So, like, why did she do that? Why is she wearing, like, a medieval cloak when she's going to drop off her baby, when she's supposed to be, like, a 15-year-old in the 90s? Or not in the 90s, sorry, in 2004. Like, why is she dressed so anachronistically? And the answer is because they really wanted to set up this mystery, but they did not have any interesting or satisfying answer to the mystery, so they basically just pulled something out of their ass, and that's what we have to deal with now. Her reunion with her mom was okay. I did not find her exit from the TARDIS touching or emotional at all, mostly because it's kind of like, you know, why are you so emotional about this when you can just, you know, meet your biological parents and then also just go back in the TARDIS? Like, no one's stopping you from doing that. Correction here, the doctor kicks her out because she's like too happy, and he like can't stand that she knows her biological family now. So I kind of feel like that's worse, but okay. She also, this bothered me, but I'm not an adoptee, so I guess this is up to the people who actually have personal experience in this situation to decide whether it was well written or not. But it did not ring true to me at all that Ruby was suddenly calling her biological mother her real mother, and not Carla, who fucking raised her whole life and who she is shown to have a fantastic relationship with. So like suddenly, like, just because you found your biological mother, you like don't love your like actual mother anymore, who like raised you and like loves you and like cared about you and like helps you throughout your whole life. Like suddenly she doesn't matter anymore just because you found like the mom who gave birth to you. Like suddenly you don't care about Carla. Like suddenly she's not your real mom anymore. I don't know, it just like, maybe that's a stupid nitpick or whatever, but that seemed extremely strange decision to me. So yes. Oh wait, no, I actually have another thing to say. The fact that he decided that Russell T Davies decided to make Ruby's whole storyline about how what matters is the person and not the whole mystery. That is exactly what was going on with Clara when you guys were like, oh, Clara sucks so much, but everyone loves Ruby for some reason because she's written by Russell T Davies and not Stephen Moffat. That's why you guys like her. You don't like her because she's a better character. You like her because she's written by a writer that you like more. And my reasoning for this is that they had extremely similar concepts for their like first season storylines, but Clara's storyline was actually better because her entire storyline was about how, regardless of the mystery, what matters the most is Clara, and the resolution of her mystery of the whole impossible girl thing, that was driven by Clara. That was something Clara chose to do. I mean, it was so, like, it's, you know, logically doesn't make sense. Is it coherent that she can just jump into his timeline and then also come out completely fine and so on and so forth? No, but what it shows us, the audience, is that Clara is smart and brave. It shows that she made that choice to do the thing that led to everything else happening. You know, it's just weird cause and effect because of the whole time thing and the way that the show works. But the whole impossible girl thing happens in the first place because Clara decides that she's going to save the doctor, and then she does by doing something that is, you know, if you think about it, it's like kind of stupid and doesn't really make sense, but it's driven by her character making decisions. Ruby's plotline is resolved. It's just resolved. It's, you know, they just go to a place to like figure out who Ruby's related to by doing like a genetic test, and then they just figure it out. Like, that's how it's resolved. That's not interesting. It doesn't tell us anything about Ruby. Like, Clara's whole plotline, it prioritizes Clara's character and constantly calls out the doctor for being wrong, to see her only as a mystery. The way they do that in this season with Ruby is they just tell us that the whole mystery they're setting up does not matter, and you should not have seen it like that at all. But Ruby doesn't get to have things like character traits. She doesn't get to have even a life outside of the doctor, and that's a huge thing for Clara, especially in season 7, which is when she's the worst written and has the least interesting character, she still gets to have a life. She's a nanny, and she's, wanting to travel, and she has this relationship with this family where she babysits their kids, and that's her job. And she's got like a degree or something, and like she has a life. She gets to, at least on paper, have a life, even if it's not properly reflected in the show, even if people felt like, oh, Clara is too much of a Mary Sue, or like, everything in her life is just like set up to make her the perfect companion or whatever. That's even more true for Ruby, but like she does not get this criticism at all, and I genuinely cannot understand it, because Ruby is, she like never argues with the doctor. She does not make any bad character decisions. She doesn't do anything like that. She doesn't get to have a life outside of the doctor. We literally don't know anything about her. Like, she doesn't have any friends. She doesn't have a job. She's unemployed. Or maybe she's not even unemployed. We don't know anything about her. All we know about her is that her mom is Clara. Her mom is Carla, and that her biological mother is some woman who left her at a church one time, and that's all we know about her. And it's all plot relevant information that does not inform her actual personality at all. So that's my rant about how Clara's story, like Clara's Impossible Girl story, was handled better than Ruby's mom mystery situation. A couple of more things. I think the scale of story that the finale is trying to tell is very big and required at least a 3-parter, ideally a 4-parter. It's trying to tell a story about the destruction of the whole universe. Like, the return of this huge, big, bad villain that's being set up for like the whole season. And he's so powerful, and he's destroying the whole universe. But it's resolved so quickly. I mean, he doesn't show up until the end of Legend of Ruby Sunday, so he's only really in it for 1 episode, and then they just kill him anyway, and it doesn't really seem like he was a threat at all, even though he killed everyone, just because of how easily they're able to kill him. Like, they literally just put him on a leash and drag him through the time vortex. It's not a hard-won victory. It just happens. It just sort of happens. It's kind of trying to tell the same scale of story that Flux told, because that was about the whole universe being destroyed too, except they try to tell the whole story within 2 episodes for some reason. This whole season is way too short. Like, 8 episodes for a Doctor Who season is just, it's too short. There's not enough time to develop the characters. With the way that Doctor Who works, every episode you're landing in a new setting generally, and you're telling a brand new story, and you need to develop that setting and that story and those side characters as well as the protagonists every single time. And this understandably leaves less time for the main protagonists than usual. This season is plagued with worse than usual writing. 8 episodes is like halfway through a Doctor Who season, and that is just not enough episodes to tell the kind of story that they're trying to tell. Like, you cannot do 6 episodes of like random episodic hijinks where nothing happens and none of the characters get any development, and then skip right to the finale, and suddenly we're supposed to have big emotional goodbyes, but it doesn't actually mean anything because we haven't had any time to connect with either of these characters. Like, I do not connect with 15. I do not connect with Ruby. There is nothing about 15 that makes me root for him more than any other Doctor, and that is something that needs to be remedied. They need to think about who is this Doctor specifically, not just who is the Doctor in general, which is, it seems, how he's been written so far. There's nothing like unique or interesting about him yet, and maybe there will be in the future, and I hope there is, but so far there isn't. And I think part of that is because they just needed more time to do what they're doing. There's no second David Tennant Doctor. There's no 14, and there's no mention of him really either. And when they're just flying around the universe doing whatever, it's fine. But when they're doing contemporary, modern day episodes set in London of all places, it's like maybe you should have thought about that. Maybe you can just say that he just, you know, like he just regenerated fully into 15, or like he just vanished one day, or like he's just dead. I don't know. Just say something. Just say he's like on vacation and freaking Venus or stuff, like something. In 73 Yards, Kate is like, oh, we have no idea where the doctor is either. And I'm like, dude, he lives with Donna, who works for you. Like, just ask her, like, have you seen the doctor recently? And he'll just show up. Like, it's fine. And the fact that it's not addressed at all just kind of makes it feel very silly that we're like ignoring the elephant in the room, which is that David Tennant just lives down the street with Catherine Tate. Yeah, this season was marketed as being a really good jumping on point. Like, it's marketed as the start of a whole new era, like New Who was. This is supposed to be like newer Who, or like Disney Plus Who, or whatever. But it's not, because it's strangely a very lore heavy season for a season where that lore is not really explained or explored. In actual season 1 from 2005, that actually was the start of a new era of Doctor Who. There was weight given to topics that were being introduced to the audience. There was weight given to the fact that the Doctor is an alien, and that he can, you know, like that alone was given like a full scene for like Rose to process what she was hearing and stuff. And the fact that we're not getting any of that with this season, like sutekh just sort of shows up and the Doctor's like moved to terror, but we don't understand what that means yet, because we haven't seen the Doctor being unflappable in the face of danger in the season, because he just hasn't had enough time to be unflappable in the face of danger. Yeah, he just hasn't. Like, that just hasn't happened yet. He's, honestly, they've written him as being terrified, like, maybe a bit too many times in such a short season. The fact that he's moved to terror to have any sort of effect on the audience. Doctor Who is gonna lean more fantasy now, was, you know, they were making this whole big deal of it. First of all, Doctor Who has always been science fantasy since the 60s. The first appearance the Toymaker had was in the 60s. Like, they were already doing science fantasy back then. Second of all, there is nothing about any of these episodes that makes them completely unable to fit into a different era of the show. You might have to do a bit of tone reworking, but plot-wise, you could have Devil's Chord with a different Doctor. Like, there's nothing about Devil's Chord that's making it impossible to you know, conceive as a Doctor Who fan that this could be in Doctor Who, because Doctor Who's already been like that. Especially if you read any of the novels or like listen to any Big Finish, like they do like crazy stuff there. Like, the show is like nothing, and they also do crazy shit in the show. When Moffat was running Doctor Who, all of Amy's plotline was basically just science fantasy. Like, Amy Pond was science fantasy. He says it in the show that it's like a fairy tale, and because it is. He's using fairy tale archetypes and some science fiction lingo to tell a science fantasy story. And Doctor Who is fine with that. Like, it works in Doctor Who. But the thing is that doesn't make this era particularly unique or anything. And an issue that I have with Russell T Davies specifically is he seems like he's writing fantasy as someone who does not like fantasy. Because like with Sutekh, with Ruby's mom, and like the reveal and everything, with like the space babies and everything, it feels like he thinks that fantasy is when you just say a wizard did it, or like magic, or this is just how the world works, and that's fantasy. But that's not what fantasy is. Fantasy has rules just as much as something like science fiction does, and it's not fantasy just because you are, you know, refusing to follow any through lines in your plots. Like, just because Sutekh can be killed by the thing that he got power from, that doesn't make it fantasy. You have to actually explain why that happens. Like, you just have to explain it. Just, you know, how does Ruby get to do all of these crazy things, like summon snow wherever she is? You have to explain that. That doesn't just happen. Like, this is in the Doctor Who universe. That doesn't happen. We've never seen it happen before. Or like, I have not seen it happen before. It doesn't happen on the show. You don't just randomly have characters that can just do shit out of nowhere, even though they're completely normal people. There has to be some kind of explanation. And the fact that there isn't is kind of infuriating as someone who is a fan of Doctor Who and of fantasy stories, because it seems quite disrespectful to the fantasy genre to kind of pretend that you can just say whatever the fuck you want and it'll just be fantasy, and then you can just call it fantasy. Like, if you just put goblins in the story, then it becomes fantasy. But that's actually not how fantasy works, because it still needs to have something that you can understand about the world. Like, it still has to be a believable world, just a believable fantasy world, which is a different, you know, sort of universe that you're creating. But it has to have things like rules, and it has to have cause and effect, which this season is completely lacking. Basically, conclusion, my thoughts are that this was a terrible season, and I'm extremely disappointed. I like Ncuti Gatwa quite a bit, so I hope that the next season will be better, but I have extremely low expectations for the next season. I believe Millie Gibson is like not going to be in it, or only going to be in it a little bit. I wish she had gotten to be in a better season of Doctor Who. That is the end of the video. I hope that season 15 will be better. I have very low expectations. Expect to see me back on this channel complaining about season 15 when it is out. Thank you.